Hi there. I'm John Paul.
Can you hear us okay?
Can you hear us?
Louder!
Louder? Okay. So we pulled a few questions from the dazed audience, which I'm going to ask Jefferson, but it's all quite chill, and we'd like you all to kind of ask questions and jump in wherever you like. I think one thing that came in that's kind of key was style over fashion or fashion over style. And we've talked about the meaning of style at length before, so what does style mean to you, Jeff?
Yeah, so just to sort of recap on what JP said, we were thinking about this morning and what you all wanted to hear and what we should talk about, and we didn't really have a clue why Web Summit asked me. I mean, this is like we were like the warm-up act or something for the for the rest of the day. And it was a funny slot. So what we did is we just put some posts out on all the dazed social channels and just said, what does our audience want to ask me? And that way we just kind of put it out there. And JP collected a whole load of questions. And he's kind of edited a few of them down. And then what we're going to do is open up to Q&A to you guys, because I just thought, like, I don't want to come here and I don't have anything to say. Like, I don't have a message. I don't have anything to sell. I don't have anything particularly that I want to tell you guys about. So I just thought we'd open it up and make it like, what do you want to hear? So these are the questions coming through now, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So let's start again, JP, and tell me what was one of the questions that came through on one of those tweets.
Style over fashion or fashion over style. What does style mean to you?
What does style mean to me? Okay. That word, right? That word style, it's like so associated with the 80s, right? It's just like panic when you hear that word, because it's associated with elitism, it's associated with sort of anti-democratic values, it's kind of a point of difference, it's like non-inclusive. But actually, if you really think about it, style is key. It's key to all creative process. If you don't have a style about the way you write, about your journalism, about the way you take photographs, about the way you design a product, if style isn't intrinsic in your process, it doesn't have your mark, it won't have your touch, it won't have your point of view. And therefore it's just homogenous. Without style, you're bland. I think Bukowski put it really well. There's a really great poem by Charles Bukowski called Style. So look it up. And there's a movie where who's that brilliant actor? Ben Gazzara, right? Ben Gazzara plays Charles Bukowski in this movie, and in the biopic, and he does a live reading of Bukowski, completely pissed out of his mind, talking about style to a collective audience in an amphitheater of students in the 1970s. And he starts the poem with the words, style is everything. A fresh way to approach a dull and dangerous thing. And then you can read the rest of it for yourselves. But I think I take my cue from Charles Bukowski when it comes to style. More Charles Bukowski, less Tom Ford.
Let's move on to the next one. If a trend is just a reoccurring adaptation of the past...
But also, just to carry on with... okay, now carry on.
We haven't got that long. So. All right. If a trend is just a reoccurring adaptation of the past, how do we achieve a fresh, innovative and sustainable fashion future?
If a what is a what?
If a trend is just a reoccurring adaptation of something that's come before.
Oh, like if everything's just recycling, if everybody's just recycling everything. How do you make
stuff fresh and exciting and new?
If everyone's recycling everything, what's new?
In an avalanche of content.
Well, is there such thing as an original idea? Probably not. But new synthesis, new hybrids of ideas. I mean, I'm really inspired by things like transdisciplinary thinking when I think when fashion works in a vacuum, when fashion exists in a bubble and it's fashion talking about fashion, it can get and it's fashion that's propelled by commerce, then of course it's just recycled, old fucking recycled ideas, only existing for profit, and that's the kind of sickness, that's the kind of disease in the industry, and that's the kind of flaw in the system and the flaw in the machine. And so what I look for and what we celebrate is anyone that breaks that system and anyone breaks that machine. And some of the first kind of thoughts that come to my mind is transdisciplinary thinking. So when you have designers that are taking inspiration and opening up conversation with science or with tech or with architecture or with art or with literature or with music, and you're finding these new hybridizations of process and productization, and people are talking about their work in new ways, and they're using clothes as a canvas for storytelling. Clothes as a kind of clothing as an ambassador of ideas. That's really when I get when I feel that designers, fashion designers, the media, fashion photography, journalism, bloggers, people that are involved in spreading the word of that industry, then they're able to enter into new territory. And when they're entering into new territory, that propels our industry into new and interesting places and more dangerous places. And I think, it's stepping out of the safety zone. It's stepping out of the system that excites me. I think David Bowie put it really well. It's like, if you feel comfortable, if you feel safe, then move on, because safety, or that feeling of safety, is actually the antithesis of creativity, right?
Well, on the Bowie tip, of fashion's golden years past, or are they yet to come?
No, everything just gets more interesting. Like, we are living right now in the most interesting times. Today is the most interesting day of all of our lives. Tomorrow will be even more interesting. That's how I think, and that's the message that I want to. That's not the message, but that's just how I think.
How do you see the future of fashion communication in this social media age?
How do I think of the what?
The future of fashion communication in the social media age.
So the future of fashion communication in the social media age is conflicted, and it's full of jeopardy, and it is amazing at the same time. So it has duality, as good versus evil. There's positive versus negative. There is, I think, a friend of mine, Hans Ulrich de Bris from the Serpentine, we were talking really recently, and I said, what is the number one threat against creativity from your point of view? And he said, the erasure of difference. And I said, well, explain that a little bit more. And he talked about the globalization of creativity, the globalization of art, the globalization of all our applied arts, and how that takes away the personal, and the individual, and how that creates a one homogenized mindset, one homogenized system, one homogenized way of thinking and feeling. And that erasure of difference is really something significant to fight against. And when we're talking about social media and fashion communication, and everybody kind of jumping on the same social media tools and using the same formats and the same tone of voice and the same way of putting images out there and the same way of talking about things, then what you get is a kind of cultural numbness, numbness. I call it a nonness, a kind of NONESS, a kind of like, a kind of a non point of view. So what I'm looking for is, how are people using social tools? How are they using how are they using technology? How are they changing channels of communication by making it their own? What is the evolution of that? It's forms of storytelling and forms of mediation that are playing with formats, playing with tone of voice, playing with playing with deconstructing that one because if everyone does it the same way, then we're just, if everyone's just copying each other and it's a cut and paste culture, then pretty soon you're all in karaoke. We're all in a fucking karaoke machine. And that's what Malcolm McLaren talked about. Yeah. I remember talking to Malcolm McLaren, and he was a really big mentor of mine, and me and Rankin are sort of like, he kind of managed me and Rankin, and we felt like we were the Sex Pistols of magazine publishing. That was how it was for us in the 90s. We had Malcolm McLaren as our kind of manager, and we thought we were the Sex Pistols. And then somehow we kind of survived the relationship. But he was instrumental to me. He said things like, "I'm obsessed by the look of music and the sound of fashion." What a great fucking quote. And we were kind of growing up in club culture at that time, I remember. I mean, I grew up in clubs. I lived in clubs. Clubs were everything to me, and that's where I kind of learned about interdisciplinary thinking. I learned about the synergy between subculture and pop culture. We were putting on bands like Lee Bowery and Minty, and we were putting on, drum and bass DJs, and then we would have like fashion performances, and all of that was about the synergy of art, fashion, music, nightlife, and so much. I feel that nightclubs globally, by the way, since the 50s, since the beginning of youth culture, nightclubs and nightlife have been the kind of laboratory for ideas that have gone on to influence pop culture, and pop culture owes everything to subculture. What pop culture does is it rips off the most commercial aspects of subculture and doesn't give it any credibility and doesn't give it any payback. And people that live in subculture know what's going to happen in pop culture 5 years in advance of it happening.
Do you think the fashion industry is producing too much at the expense of quality, starting to burn people out, burn designers out, kill their creativity?
Oh, they're strong words. That's a long topic. Okay, just say that one slowly again.
Well, you have Raf.
I would take the word kill. Can we take the word kill out of that?
Yeah, okay. Maybe sort of destroying their pure creativity because they're expected to produce so much, so fast that everyone wants to see it immediately.
So we know about, the kind of, fashion's got so big, the demands on designers have got much bigger than they ever have before. Is that creating a burnout effect on creativity, on the process? Well, yeah, it is not sustainable for a creative being to, be producing quality work when they're being pushed to, produce more and more and more and more. I think there's a few extreme examples, a few individuals who are able to handle it, but, it's incredibly demanding to balance that. I think what's interesting is to see what the backlash is against that and to see what is going on the fringes of all of that. And I'm seeing a lot more value being put on independent labels, a lot more independence, a lot of designers doing that, following the Azzedine Alaïa route of going, I'm gonna work outside of the system, fuck the fashion system, I'm gonna create my own system, or I'm gonna create a hybrid between the fashion system and my system, and I'm gonna find a way to exist within it and outside it. I don't think it's about smashing the fashion system, but I think it's about re-engineering it or rewiring it to that designer's point of view and that designer's methodology, so that they don't become a victim of it. And I think I think that whole premise of kind of hacking the system, whatever system you're in, whether it's the art world, the fashion world, because it's all. The fashion world doesn't exist on its own. The same pressures that are on the fashion world are within the music industry, within the art world, within the design world, within all of these other worlds where creativity is at the center of it, and then commerce and globalization and the the speed of technology, those conflicting forces have weighed in on creativity. And what's happened is, people that have found a way to retain a creative voice within that have been the ones who've pushed back against the system to make it work for them. And they're the people that I really admire and tend to follow and tend to get turned on by. And there's young designers coming through that are doing that. Maybe I should can name check a few, but
yeah, well, it's kind of creativity in the service of ultra capitalism, isn't it? Which kind of brings us to the protest against indifference, which is one of your kind of main slogans. I mean, how do you think that plays out in the fashion sphere? Protest against indifference.
Well, I think this phrase "protest against indifference" is something that's surfaced in a few of the things that I've written, and it kind of links a little bit to what Hans-Ulrich de Brist said, but it's really about, if we are informed, if we have this kind of knowledge base now that we do have, much more than any generation before us ever had, about where products are coming from, how products are made, about consumer behavior, about the cause and effect of the way that we represent gender, the way that we represent body, the way that we represent race, then, to continue to reinforce cultural stereotype is not something that you can let people off the hook for. That protest against indifference is to say that if there's evidence and you are witness to that evidence, then, and you just turn a blind eye, then you are as culpable as the perpetrators of that of that type of cultural conditioning, let's call it. And the media and the industry has been able to kind of get away with it in the 80s and 90s and 00s in a way that they can't be allowed to get away with it anymore. And that's super interesting to me. And I think everybody, every creator, every creative, and to an extent the reader as well, and everybody who is aligned to making a positive social contribution through their work and in their life, is a part of this protest against indifference.
Yeah. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. Can we get one question at least from the audience? We've gone a bit over time. It'd be really great to have one of you jump in. Do any of you have a question you'd like to ask? Don't be shy, obviously.
What do you see as the most exciting aspect of the interface between traditional and digital media?
The most exciting interface between print and digital, well, I just think that, kids like magazines. Photography looks brilliant in print. Print's collectible. I think if you push the production values, if you push the collectability of it, the hybridization between kind of a book and a magazine, it's still an important artifact, but it is an artifact, and I think that the magazine is very much the souvenir of the show, and the show is what's happening in real time online, and it's part of the kind of global 24-hour-on discourse, and the magazine is this, deep dive, let's say, and I really do push all of our teams to look at that deep dive. Journalism now is much more about, being able to, we're pushing much more long-form storytelling. We're just doing a story that's going to break in another magazine where we've followed Karl Lagerfeld for a year. So we're doing a year in the life of Karl, which will break in, and that's the ambition that print should have now. It's like if digital's playing out the kind of all of that kind of news and analysis and data and and is breaking out that kind of I call it, I say it's like a rock show, you know. It's like that's the live show and the magazine's like the souvenir for that show, right? That's kind of the best way I can describe it.
Okay, we're literally out of time. If there's one more very quick question, we can take that, and then we've got to split. Over here, this lady over here.
But my cover of another magazine, the digital image cover, that's fucking exciting. And there's more to come on that, and I'll be speaking about that on the main stage. So I didn't want to go into that because it's going to blow what we're doing this afternoon on center stage.
You mentioned transdisciplinary thinking earlier. What type of tech entrepreneur would you like to pair with which fashion brand? Like Steve Jobs for Prada? Like, what would be your dream sort of collaboration between tech entrepreneur, fashion brand?
Raf Simons and Palmer Luckey. That'll do.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Cheers.